Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the new album from Walk the Moon, titled Talking is Hard. Now, as many of you undoubtedly know, a lot of music pulls inspiration from older genres and styles, sometimes looking backwards to evoke a retro sound, sometimes looking forward in order to innovate and build off of that sound. But with so much of pop culture pulling from different eras of itself, one needs to ask the question when it's less of an affectionate homage and more of just a shameless ripoff. Because in some cases, it's starts to get pretty blatant, especially with pop music when you don't always have a unique driving spirit behind it. But even when you have that, taking the example of Lady Gaga, even she gets accused of outright ripping off Madonna when she doesn't. Is it a factor of time? How many years can go by before an artist can really draw from the past without being called a ripoff? Or is it a matter of the influence's presence and clout and how sacrosanct somebody might consider their art, how defining of the time it was? Or how well the successor uses those influences and adapts them into something new? That's a big question too. Now, all these are pretty heavy subjects to deal with the succession and the progression of art, how it evolves, and probably a little bit too heavy to be linked with Walk the Moon, an indie rock act who first burst onto the scene in 2010 and now have been slowly gaining some steam thanks to some strong singles with some really quirky videos. And as I mentioned in the last episode of Billboard Breakdown, instrumentally, they reminded me a lot of The Killers, just minus some of the self-serious posturing, the grander lyrical scope, and the decadent insanity that used to characterize some of The Killers' best work. But bands sounding more like The Killers is not a bad thing, and Walk the Moon have a loose electric energy that made them a lot of fun. I wasn't sure how much of it would really grip me in the end, but at the end of the year, why not throw on a fun indie rock record to really stick out? So I chose to check out their newest album, Talking is Hard, which has actually been managing to get some critical acclaim behind it. So, is the record worth it? Well, honestly, not really. I will say that some of my initial judgments about the band might be slightly misaligned, because they aren't so much Killers light as they pull from dozens of prominent indie rock acts over the past decade in order to create their sound, which strangely only really gripping for me when they stick for high energy, lightweight dance tracks. But beyond that, I get a strangely hollow feeling whenever I listen through Talking is Hard by Walk the Moon. A little analogous to the same hollow feeling that some have said they found whenever they listened to Bleacher's debut album, Strange Desire. But where that album managed to find themes and emotional weight to really anchor it and grip me, Talking is Hard doesn't quite stick the landing, at least for me. So okay, let's start with the instrumentation and production, and I know wholeheartedly this is an issue for me as a music critic that most casual listeners will be able to easily ignore. But the hodgepodge of elements crammed together on this album does feel like it's appropriated from a dozen different, more distinctive, iconic bands. I made the Killers comparison already, but between the fuzzier guitars, stiffer 80s inspired beats, the rollicking bass lines, I hear elements of Vampire Weekend, Foster the People, Franz Ferdinand, the 1975, Bleachers, and even Fall Out Boy at points. Now I'm not saying this is bad, with the exception of Foster the People. I like all of these bands, but that doesn't help Walk the Moon form a unique identity for me. If I were to say one area where they do actually stand out, it'd be in the interjection of some chiptune inspired synths or an icier sound that's somewhat reminiscent of LaRue. But this leads to an issue in some of the production, namely that the mix can feel just a little bit busy, not really focusing enough on the melody line across the choruses, instead just amping up the percussion, which isn't bad. There is a lot of texture there, but without distinctive melodic progressions, it makes Walk the Moon feel even more anonymous in comparison with their inspirations. That said, there are points where they find a solid groove and does play some pretty good dividends, even if their inspirations are fairly obvious. I mean, Shut Up and Dance is a fantastic groove, even though a lot of Killers influence. I like the fluttering 80s inspired melody at the top of the mix and the bass line on Avalanche, great song. The thicker electronic textures on Down in the Dumps that remind me a lot of early 80s synth pop in the vein of a band like Styx. The bouncy Caribbean-inspired rhythm and melody of Walk This Body, really fun song, and especially the synth-heavy shades of We Are the Kids that remind me a lot of modern neon trees with more distinctive color in their instrumentation. In other words, only a good thing. But you know what? Here's the thing. One of the biggest reasons you remember some of those indie rock acts that I mentioned, both influential and otherwise, they're the frontman like Brandon Flowers or Alex Kapranos or Jack Antonoff or Tyler Glenn. These guys have huge, distinctive personalities, or they're intricate songwriters like Pete Wentz or Ezra Koenig that can bring levels of nuance and intricacy to what they're saying. And in that department, Walk the Moon's Nicholas Petricka isn't quite in the same ballpark in terms of personality or range or power. He tends to stay more in his mid to upper range, and that strikes me as a real misstep against heavier synth-heavy production that tends to sit in a very similar range and can really clash with some of his vocals. And that's the very same complaint I'd level at Mark Foster, especially when they both have these richer, lower ranges that they could use more often and they don't. And to me, Patrika's voice comes across as just a little bit thin, especially when he tries to go for more of a raw delivery like Up to You, which isn't really all that convincing. Now, I'm not going to deny that he's a versatile vocalist. For a record like this, he kind of has to be, but he doesn't exactly bring a lot of unique personality to the table as a singer. It doesn't really grip me. So, okay, what about the lyrics? Well, let's be blunt here. With the dance-heavy vibe of this album, you could easily make the argument that the lyrics don't matter and can be easily ignored. And you know what? Here's the funny thing. When the lyrics stick to simpler, more broadly sketched topics, the songs tend to work a lot better, at least for me. Shut Up and Dance, perfect example here, where the narrator is seeing love and the girl just wants him to shut up and just enjoy the ecstasy of the moment. Avalanche takes a similar seize the moment vibe with being starstruck with this girl on stage. Work This Body is a success anthem, and We Are the Kids is pure underdog populism. Hell, I even like Different Colors. It's just a come together dance track. It kind of worked in that vein. But where this album does stumble is when it tries to get a little bit more complicated lyrically. Up to You takes the hard work of Work This Body, but fuses it with this sour tone as it addresses this girl that the narrator has to become hardened and cold to survive in the industry, and he's not gonna change, so it's all up to her. And the choice to play the song as demented and wild as it is probably wasn't the best, because it's very clear that he's the one with the problem, and he's gonna try making commentary on what the industry does to people. Well, I'm sorry, the tone feels off here. Portugal's got a similar problem, a relationship track that didn't work out. He moved on because she hadn't grown up enough, and yet he's still leading her on through the chorus, which just rubs me the wrong way. Then there's Spend Your Money, which is calling out girls for being shallow. Yet the first verse seems to imply he's shopping just as much and he's just as shallow, which really makes the song's condescension lack a lot of weight and come across as a little insufferable. Now, you could make the argument that's all intentional. The album's loose theme is surrounding difficulties in communication, either self-imposed or otherwise, hence the title of the album, Talking Is Hard. But the message they find a connection, at least on that song, is in that shared materialism. Hell, across this album, the theme seems to be less that people should communicate and talk out their issues, but the exact opposite. Shut Up and Dance, Different Colors. Hell, Up to You has the narrator talking and looking like a complete asshole. Every time there is a conversation on this album, it's rarely framed as being a good thing or positive, and that strikes me as shockingly adolescent and shallow in its own right. And you know, okay, fine, it's a unique and interesting theme. Avoid communication, just shut up and dance, enjoy yourself. Talking is hard, so why do it all together? But it's so thinly explored and articulated that the songs trying to touch on it, they just don't build to a lot to me. I feel the theme is really underweight here. So you know what? At the end of the day, Talking Is Hard by Walk the Moon is better the less you think about it. If you can ignore the cavalcade of obvious influences and the occasionally questionable lyrics, there are definitely elements to enjoy here and some legitimately great songs that I like. But as a whole, it just doesn't really click for me. I'm feeling a solid 6 out of 10 and only a tentative recommendation. It's an interesting and varied record, don't get me wrong, and at its best, at its most shallow and populist and fun, but I don't see it really sticking around or lasting all that much. At least for me. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. If there's any other albums you want me to cover before the end of the year, or if there's anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm more than happy to give it a listen. Until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.